Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. A will and the appointment of executors are absolutely essential when someone dies. They ensure your wishes are honored. Wills are vital for everyone, regardless of your wealth, because without one, the courts will decide who inherits your property and who looks after your dependents, including your pets, often leading to unnecessary stress, costs, and uncertainty for those you leave behind. Today, I want to start a movement encouraging pet rescues and pet shelters to ask adopters if they plan to include their pets in their wills and set aside funds for their care after death. I also want to promote the idea that people should discuss caring for their pets with their estate lawyers and making formal arrangements to ensure their pets' well-being when they die. Today, I'm joined by Barb Amsden. She's a consumer advocate and the author of How to Laugh at Death and Taxes, What Executors, Will Makers, Heirs, and Beneficiaries Need to Know, and Cheryl Maloney, an investment advisor and certified executor advisor at Caldwell Securities Limited. Ladies, welcome to Empowered. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Liz.
So you've both been here before, but I thought this was super, super important, and I wanted to have you back again, and I want to talk about wills and estates and pets. So Cheryl, let's begin with you. What specifically is an executor, and what does an executor do?
Well, an executor, otherwise known as an estate trustee or estate administrator, is a person named in a will who's going to make sure that the instructions in the will are properly followed. If you're like 90% of Canadians over the age of 45, you're probably going to ask a family member or a trusted friend to settle your estate. And this position has traditionally been seen as a position of honor and trust. And you usually accept it out of a sense of moral obligation to the person who asked you. And when you look at what an executor has to do, it really starts with, for example, arranging the funeral. That's one of their first tasks. You have to, of course, get the will probated, protect and secure the assets of the estate, and also locate assets that are in the will in case they're not easily found. You have to communicate with the beneficiaries. You have to do a whole bunch of accounting, everything from settling debts, finding receivables, paying taxes, filing tax returns, and of course, distributing the assets to the heirs and the beneficiaries, and doing a final accounting of all the estate documents that you've been dealing with. And when you look at the tasks altogether, they have to be done, and they can equal up to, say, 90 to 100 tasks that the executor has to do. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Now, Barb, I want to bring you in too. Your book has been out for a year, and I can see through your newsletter and all your social media posts that you're both harping on old points and hammering home new ones. Are people slow to heed the wake-up call?
Well, I think it's fair to say that young people think they've got all the time in the world. Older people think that they'll have enough time left, but maybe they don't. And then there's the rest of us who are in between realizing, I've got to get to that will, I've got to get to updating it. And then we just lose ourselves and not have time. So I'm hoping that some of the stories that Cheryl and I covered today and that you mentioned will get some people moving on it now. It's so important.
I hope so too. So let's talk about one huge case that just came out. One of the best known cases right now that we've talked about was Gene Hackman. Let's talk about that.
So Gene Hackman, Academy Award winner, and is best known for some of his tough guy roles, a policeman in The French Connection, and then as Lex Luthor in Batman. However, even he comes to the end of his strength, and he's very frail. And so at 95, he and his wife, who was 65, died just in February, just a couple of days apart. And what this case tells us is it's a bit of a surprise, which is probably because his wife was 30 years younger than him. His will simply gave everything to her. But it turns out that his wife had died before he did. Their bodies weren't found for some time. And therefore, everything she had went to him. But he had not made plans for what happened if his wife died first. So the real message here is everybody has to check their wills to make sure they work whichever of a spouse dies first.
You know, and this is very important. A lot of people don't even think about that. And you've got to have a backup. A backup is very, very important in your will. Not only do you have to have an executor that you know will be able to carry on all the work that you need, but you also have to have backup people in case your executor or the person that you've put all of your money towards does die. So please don't go away. When you come back, we'll be right back with more important details about wills. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, Successful Estate Administration, Protecting People, Pets, and You. Cheryl, I'm coming back to you. Based on the real-life case that we just heard Barb talk about, is there one thing that stands out as the biggest missing piece in successful estate administration?
Well, it really comes down to communication. So, for example, the greatest determinant of successful estate administration is how well you communicate with your executor, your beneficiaries, and your trusted advisors while you're still living. So, case in point with Gene Hackman, he comes from my parents' generation, or maybe slightly older than my parents, where you didn't have a lot of discussion around inheritance, around sharing your estate plans. It really wasn't talked about openly. And that's a real mistake we make today, because we have to set our executors and our beneficiaries up for success. And the only way we can do that is by open lines of communication. You have to prepare them for success and for what they're going to come up against.
So Barb, Cheryl is just talking about communication, which is really important in whatever it is that you do. But communication must be even more important in cases involving vulnerable individuals.
That's absolutely correct, and clearly it turns out that that Gene Hackman and his wife were such individuals, and there hadn't been plans put in place in other aspects of their lives. There was a case in England, again, just very recently. It was a father, 76-year-old father, who had a son who had born with, he was blind, had autism, and he basically could communicate with a keyboard. So he was looking after him. The daughter would come out to visit once a week and give the father a day off and spend the day with her brother. And then one day she arrived, and it turned out her father had passed away. Her brother was near death, lying beside him because he could not communicate outside. Now, this family had tried to go with they call them councils in England for special help, but were unable to get it. And after this death, they were able to bring in a caregiver's emergency plan, but it only worked where it was known that a caregiver was weakening and so on, and didn't deal with the case of a caregiver having some form of a heart attack and so on. Now, there are, as we know nowadays, things where you can have people call you once a day. If you don't have close family, at least there are services. However, clearly this wasn't done in this case, and nor did it seem like there was anything of that nature in place for the Hackmans either. So it's something, again, it's not just after death, it's before death that a focus needs to be made and plans need to be made for people that are vulnerable.
So Cheryl, clearly one message from the case Barb has just mentioned is the importance of pre-planning as well as communication, as we've mentioned. If this is understood, why are so many estates still messy and fraught with disagreements, anger, and heartbreaks?
Well, Liz, there's a lot of people out there who are not prepared to die, but there's way more people out there who are not prepared to manage or settle an estate. So when people think about estate planning, maybe they think it's time to get my affairs in order. So what they'll do is they'll think about who they want to choose as an executor, powers of attorney, and then they'll go to their lawyer and get their wills drawn up and their powers of attorney drawn up. And that's where they stop. And that's the planning part. But if you really want your estate to be settled successfully, you have to focus on the administrative side. And that is the tiresome and really big job of cataloging and listing all of your assets, all of your property, all your trusted contact people you have to list. And think about your executor's going to walk in and everything in your wallet they're going to have to deal with. So canceling your cards, your bank accounts, you name it. So it's that extra step and really, really focusing on the preparation side, the administration side. What exactly is your executor going to have to do for you? And have you laid it all out so they don't have to be Sherlock Holmes walking into your house and figuring it out on the fly?
So Cheryl, we've got about a minute before we go to break, but from what I can take from your perspective is that the executor is key when it comes to handling an estate, correct?
Yes, correct. And it's, of course, the executor is key, but it's really the person writing the will, so the testator, that is going to set the executor up for success. So it's, if you're asking someone to be your executor, make sure you go the extra mile and put everything together for them. So, as I said before, they're not going to be that detective trying to figure it all out.
Okay, so quickly before we go to break, when do the responsibilities kick in as an executor, and who's the executor responsible to?
So let's say if you were asked to be executor for person A and they pass away, if you start any of the duties of an executor, you have then entered into the role of the executor. If you wish to recuse yourself, you have to do that before you do any of the duties. And usually it starts when the executor is planning the funeral.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, Successful Estate Administration, Protecting People, Pets, and You. And before we went to break, I was talking to Cheryl. So Cheryl, who is the executor responsible to?
Well, the executor is personally liable to the beneficiaries and creditors for any investment losses or breaches of trust. And notice I said personally liable. It's not the estate that's going to make up the losses for anything an executor does incorrectly. It's the executor that is liable for that. So we don't really think about the role of executor as having a large personal financial risk, but nothing could be further from the truth. It's like pledging your own personal assets to take on this role. And as anyone out there who's going to be a testator asking someone to be their executor, it's really important that you sit down and go through your will together with them so they know what they're taking on and there are no questions left unanswered.
Yeah, that's a very, very good suggestion. Barb, we've been talking about executors and focusing on wills here, but many people may actually need a power of attorney first, possibly years before their will must be acted upon. Most people don't think about powers of attorney. So until they have children themselves or they're reaching middle age, are you saying that's the wrong approach?
I'd say that probably that was the right approach in the past, but things change. And one of the two big changes is that legal changes have been being made to respect the privacy and the autonomy of decisions of people that are of adults. So as soon as they take the age of majority, which in Canada is 18 or 19. And then the second thing is that younger people actually are now dying proportionally more at a younger age than they have in the past. And that can be attributable to things such as TikTok challenges or taking selfies in kind of dangerous places, even if unintentionally. And then there are serious, drug overdose issues and some other types of things that are adding to this. So if you add together the risk and the likelihood that people and hospitals and doctors may be less inclined to automatically allow a parent to help out in a situation of an accident or an illness. It's time for the teenagers, as soon as they become adults, that they should get powers of attorney.
So, Barb, on the same subject of powers of attorney, let's talk about Bailey's Wish Foundation for young adults to name power of attorneys.
This is again a very sad story. This came out of in Florida. There was a 19-year-old girl, pre-med student, apparently brilliant. She'd been out with her sorority sisters, and she decided to come home early. She got into a shared Uber. It turned out that the other people she was sharing it with were not so good. Shared a bottle of water with her, which obviously was drugged. She was let out. She called friends to come pick her up, stumbled by accident into traffic, and was hit. So then her parents get that call that no parent wants to hear. They come flying down to Florida, and then the hospital will tell her that their daughter Bailey is alive, but they cannot give her any other information because she hasn't signed a release, a health information release. And then it gets worse. They were not able to, in fact, direct any of the daughter's health situation. That the decision was given over to an ethics committee at the hospital, and they determined that she was in a vegetative state, but she would be kept alive artificially, which was not what the parents believed was the daughter's interest, or what would have been her choice. So they have set up this foundation to strongly encourage people to get powers of attorney, and encouraging people, especially going to university or going off traveling, that they have a power of attorney with them when they're traveling.
So Cheryl, I'm going to ask you this question. When somebody is putting together their will, is that the time for them to put together a power of attorney, or is that just a completely separate thing?
I think it's important to do at the same time. And your lawyer will ask you that. Who would you like to include as a power of attorney? And of course, you have power of attorney for property, so financial matters, and a power of attorney for health. And those could be two separately different people. And again, at the same time, they're going to ask you, who do you want to be the executor of your will? And in a lot of instances, the executor and power of attorney can be the same person.
So I know we're just getting ready to go to commercial break, and I know, Barb, that you've got a big question for me. But what I want to focus on when we come back is pets, because to me, it's really important to have our furry friends and our family with fur really protected when someone dies, because I want to share a personal story which actually enticed me to redo this show and focus on pets. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more executors, powers of attorneys, and actually protecting your pets. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. I'm joined today by Barb Amsden, a consumer advocate and the author of How to Laugh at Death and Taxes, What Executors, Will Makers, Heirs, and Beneficiaries Need to Know, and Cheryl Maloney, an investment advisor and certified executor advisor at Caldwell Securities Limited. Today's episode, Successful Estate Administration, Protecting People, Pets, and You.
Well, Liz, I've always wanted to be you, of course. So I'd like to ask the question. You told me a story when you were searching for a new family member, and it just blew my mind to hear something that came out that related to an executor. Why don't you tell us that story?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Barb. So my little Miss Freddie White Sox passed away in May 2024 after I had her for 17 and a half years. She was my family member. And we went to a rescue, and the rescue basically said no to me to adopt another cat because I had let Miss Freddie White Sox go outside with a 6-foot fence in a 2-story home, supervised, and she could barely jump on a chair. And so I got a little bit annoyed, and I thought, why are they asking me whether I'm sending her outside in a supervised area? Why are they not adding, if you do adopt this cat, will you put this cat in your will? And will you leave enough money so that somebody, the person that you put in the will to take care of your pet, will take care of it with money and be able to buy food and take them to the vet? But then I had somebody reach out to me about a woman who was fostering a cat. And this poor little guy was way up north Canada. He was in a wonderful home, well taken care of, and his person died. And when his person died, the executor went into the house and kicked him out onto the street. So May of 2024, he was kicked out onto the street, walking the streets up north in Northern Ontario. And somebody found him in December, minus 20 degrees Celsius, 8 inches of snow, and he was desperately trying to find a home to get into. And so I got angry and I thought, why is an executor kicking out somebody's family member when they pass? And then I thought, I want to start a movement. I want rescues and shelters to add this question into their adoptive process so that if you do adopt a dog or a cat, will you put this dog or cat into your will and make sure that there are enough funds to take care of them? So I'll leave it to you ladies now.
Well,
I
I'm
think
going to
there's
jump in here.
the
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl. Let's start with Cheryl, and then Barb, you can take
Yeah,
over.
Okay.
perfect.
Liz, you are right. In Ontario, a pet is considered personal property under the law. So, pets can go, if they're not listed in your will, for example, they can go, to an unintended guardian, or at worst to a shelter, or left out like this poor little kitten was. So what you can do is you can include a clause in your will, leave it generic, say something like any pet alive at the time of death is given to, and name your pet guardian. Now, I'd highly recommend that you advise your pet guardian that you're going to list them in your will to take over your pets if something were to happen to you. And you might want to leave them a little something extra so Rex and Fluffy can continue to live in the lifestyle they're accustomed to.
Barb?
And that's the most important parts. The other parts that come across that come to my mind was that, first of all, my sister's, she doesn't have fluffy pets. She has 3 tortoises, the largest of which is 40 pounds and over 40 years old. And that, again, don't take much, they're not much trouble to look after, but they're not exactly as easy as some people would expect. So number one is to making sure that somebody knows that you've got a pet. Second thing is, as Cheryl said, making sure that you've found somebody that you think is not just responsible, but that the pet would like to live with them, and that they will love that pet just as you have. The third thing is to,
otherwise, it's a perpetual motion that we go back into, and the pets will go back into shelters and all the rescues. So thank you so much,
Exactly.
ladies. Barb and Cheryl want you to know that an estate plan doesn't include preparations for all family members, including pets, isn't a plan. No matter what your age or the age of any adult you care about, always have a plan B and carry powers of attorney with you when you travel, and make sure those whom you love know where they are. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.